So I was very intrigued by this film because usually, and especially in Rotterdam, there's a lot of films that are about somehow negotiating your past and like finding home videos or fragments or footage from your family and sort of putting it out there as a fiction of some sort. But this is extreme because you're superimposing an entire new layer. So I'm curious, like the moment you find this material, what's the impulse that makes you go in a way outside of yourself and your family dynamic to say, no, this is going to be, I'm going to put on top something completely outrageously false in a way?
False and true.
False and true, sure, but nominally false.
Yeah, when I found the film rolls, I didn't know what was inside them and what state they were in, but then I started to look at them, and I knew I wanted to do something with them, and I also knew very clearly, that was years ago, that I didn't want to make a documentary filmmaking about my grandparents. You know, like for me that was clear. Mainly for two reasons. One, because of I didn't want to talk about them. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to talk about their lives. Mm-hmm. It's a bit maybe contradictory, but somehow I was feeling comfortable using the images, mm-hmm. but not telling about them. And the second thing was the process was, for me, much funnier and free, fantastic, without having to be limited by their lives. And the third thing is, at the end, I think we all talk about ourselves and our families, you know, like just in another way, and that's why the first sentence of the film is the one it is. And I also have to say, my mother, when she saw the film, she told me I had made like a most truthful portrait of mm-hmm. her parents than if I had told the truth. So maybe it's better sometimes to use fiction mm-hmm. To tell truths.
And I mean, the other incredible thing is that, and I thought one of the reasons that one would want to do something like this is that these images have incredible production value. So in a way, it's like when your grandfather was shooting this, it was transcending himself in the sense that this is almost too much to be contained in a familiar narrative of like generations within a family. This is like some truly impressive. It's a tour of the entire world. It's a documentary of time passing, great milestones and landmark throughout the century. I mean, does this need to be liberated onto this platform?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would like to say is I'm sure he didn't know. He wasn't aware. Really.
But it must have been.
No, he ended up filming. He finished filming when my grandmother died mm-hmm. in 1969, and all these film rolls were hidden in the basement. So he never talked about them, and he lived until 2010, and I had a relationship with him, but he never told us about it. So I'm quite sure he wasn't aware of the value. He enjoyed filming them, and I think that's part of the enchantment of mm-hmm. of why they are so great, because he was really having this look, and he was enjoying doing that. And yeah, of course, we want to offer them to a filmothèque. The only thing is, you know, like we don't want them to use the personal images, but of course there's New York, there's San Francisco, there's Hawaii, there's Spain, France, UK. There is much more footage of Asia, for example, and of other places in the world, so yeah.
Italy too.
Italy too, a lot of Italy, yeah, and beautiful. Yeah. And it's, you know, for me, it's amazing because another planet, another universe. It doesn't exist anymore, not just because of the, like, of course, they were having a great life economically, but it's not only that, it's a different world. You see places with no people, like no selfie sticks and this kind of stuff.
So talk to me about the choice of using subtitles, because again, this is there's someone telling a story on top of another story, but like realistically you could see someone using a voiceover, and instead you don't, and this story is told in subtitles. And as I was watching it, it creates this gentler relationship with the images, almost as if like attacking this footage with the voiceover would have been too much of an invasion, and the text is sort of mediated. It's a way of getting your news story in there, but also not fully. Is that the thing, or is it just because of this sensorial aspect with Leon's hearing problem?
No, it has more about to do with what you're saying, but it's also, there are two other things. I of course tried voiceover just to discard it, but I needed to try just to say I have tried it. But I knew from the beginning, almost, I had decided I didn't want to. First of all, there's a kind of thing related to the diary, to the format of the diary. You read a diary, and you don't hear a diary. And for me, it was like when you find the personal diary of someone and you open it and you read it, you don't know how it was written, if crying, if laughing, if with irony or tirade or whatever. The voice gives all this information. And I prefer people to imagine the voice of Vivian, not just the pitch and everything also, but from what place was he talking. And for me that was really important. And the reactions actually have been very different. Some people were really laughing a lot and some others were more either sad or crying or surprised, but it wasn't uniform, and that's what I like also about cinema in general, about telling stories. And I know it's difficult to read with these wonderful images, but that's why there is some space between, or some rhythm, or that's what we've tried.
I don't think I've ever seen a film that uses subtitles like this, freeing them from the correspondence with sound, and it just creates an interesting effect, because it's like the words are potentially, they can be lost, and it's much more delicate of a balance. Recently I saw this film, Just Don't Think I'll Scream, which is it's very beautiful collection of edits from films put together. So it's, in a way, it's all about the style of this composition, but it turns out there's a voiceover telling a story, and there the voice is fighting with your instinct of looking at the images and sort of decoding, this clip is from that film, or how is this clip working with the next? And then your brain is split in two. And this was the opposite of that, because it just completely appears from nowhere, and I don't know, it does something psychologically, I think, that is very interesting to the whole dynamic. Also because this is a story about words and texts that are to be believed, that are fraudulent, like the guru. So tell me about that.
Everything is a fraud.
But isn't that
the film
cynical?
itself, it's also a fraud.
Yeah?
No, I don't want to see the film as a fraud, and I actually told the people the other day at the Q&A, I hope nobody is feeling fooled, because that's not the intention at all of the film, obviously, just the opposite. No, I think it's funny, because for me a diary is a way also of reconstructing your own identity and your own memories and your own life. And it's the same when you film. We do exactly the same when we film and when we edit and when we tell a story we have lived. So it's never gonna be the same than it was. And all this, for me, that was part of the idea of the film, this reconstruction, this reinterpretation of reality. And that's what, for me, it has to do with that, not that much with fraud. Because, for example, Cariapali works and Lovedin works. So what's the problem? No? Yeah, true, it works. Well, is it that important that he plagiarized texts?
Yeah.
Is it?
But I mean, when we receive that information, no, you're right. But it's natural in this case for the viewer to think of you and maybe wonder if what brought you to imagine a story like that, which in a way is sort of contrasting the purity of these feelings, the literary echoes that they create, with almost a sense of distrust and ultimately maybe a bit of cynicism in it.
Yeah, but I think all what you've said, purity and cynicism and beauty and fraud, this all belongs to life. Everyone has experienced all of this. I don't believe in, like black and white or, this starts and ends and it's all clean and perfect. No, it's not like that. Life is never like that. So it was about that a bit. And tell me about the use of sound, because again, that's closely related to your use of subtitles, but the sound in this film is very peculiar. It comes and goes. It's mostly silent. It's there for effect, background. Sometimes it underlines the central moments. But it's also, I noticed, it's used mostly with like vehicles, the transportation modes. You hear the cars, you hear the planes, you hear the boat a lot. And I'm wondering, that's also the two characters that you imagine. They're split in the sense that the man loves to fly, then he loves the boat. He just loves to move, and is the master of the images in the film. Whereas the woman is she's keeping up with that to please him, but she's having this whole other world which is silent. So that has also to do with the diary. But the sound has been a great work from Jonathan Darch, who is the sound designer, and also Cristóbal Fernández, who is the co-editor of the film. And it was a huge work because I knew I wanted to have a great part of the film in silence. And this has to do with going back to original cinema, with just watching moving images, because I think that has been lost, and we are somehow all the time surrounded by noise, continuously. And I like this silence, and it makes for me images more powerful, and also the sound there is much more powerful. And the sound there is wants to express the feelings mainly of her. And yeah, you're right, sometimes there is the transportation thing also. It's like the contrast between what she's experiencing with what he's living. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, this is Eric from IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.